Nabataean skyscapes and ritual times, Antonio César González-García. César is a scientific staff at the Institute of Heritage Sciences, part of the Spanish National Research Council. He holds a PhD in astrophysics from the Rijksuniversiteit in Groningen, did postdoctoral studies at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid and the Institute of Astrophysics of Canarias, both in Spain. Since 2012, he is a member of INCIPIT, where he's been doing research on archaeoastronomy and cultural astronomy for 20 years, following a multidisciplinary research line centered in understanding how the sky was incorporated by past societies in their everyday life, especially how their concept of time, religion, and space were fossilized in the orientation and location of their cultic buildings. He's been president of the European Society for Astronomy and Culture from 2017 to 2023, and he's member of the Council of the International Society for Archaeoastronomy and Astronomy and Culture, and of the organizing committee of IAU Commission C5 Cultural Astronomy. His most recent book in Spanish, translated to English as Stone Skies, The Astronomy of Our Ancestors, is an excellent introduction to this topic of study for the wider public, and we are thrilled that he's here today to talk about how this specific issue relates to the Nabataean and the pre-Islamic cultures of Arabia. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to deliver this lecture at the International Association for the Study of Arabia. And I'm also honored that this lecture has been named the annual Beatrice de Cardi lecture. So thank you for all of these. In this lecture, I would like to introduce a few results from the research we have been doing in the area where the Nabataeans dwell some 20 centuries ago in the northwest part of Arabia, and how these results tell us something on the concept of that the Nabataeans may have had on the skies and the ritual times. This is part of a research project together with people from the Canary Islands, mainly Juan Antonio Belmonte from the Institute of Astrophysics in the Canaries, and also researchers here at my institute in Italy and in Saudi Arabia. This project is part of this new, well, not so new, but rather unknown field for many people called cultural astronomy. Cultural astronomy is a broad endeavor to try to answer in brief these two broad questions. The first one would be how the sky helps shaping the way human societies understand the world. Basically, this has to do with the surroundings that we find in many sites, for example, archaeological sites, that they are in many occasions understood in relation to other areas in the surroundings, in the landscape. And normally this landscape ends at the horizon line, but cultural astronomy tries to see how these things that happen above this line, these horizon lines, also help and shaping the way people locate themselves in the landscape, not only because it helps locating oneself, orientating things. For example, we know that the sun rises in particular areas in the horizon and sets in others, and this helps defining directions, but also the timings that these events happen, that they are regular somehow, and we will see this later on, help also understand the concept of time that these societies may have had, and how these concepts, they have been fossilized into their material culture through the orientation, how these buildings, for instance, temples or ritual places, they had to be directed to particular points in the horizon so that they were facing to the correct spot in the correct moment. And this, for the Nabataeans, we have been investigating this, as I said, for almost 2 decades already. All of you know that in the 2 centuries before and after the change of Common Era, the Nabataeans, they control this area of northwest Arabia, where some of the routes, the caravan routes, crossing the the Arabian Peninsula, meet to basically transport goods such as incense to the Mediterranean ports. And the Nabateans, thanks to this wealth coming from the commerce of the incense and other goods, and also from their mastership on dealing with the few water resources they had, building channels, cisterns, and other reservoirs that are still in use even today, they had the ability to also create a very prosperous agriculture that made this area very, very rich in this time. Possibly this society is most known for its architecture, meaning the carving of rock-cut domes and facades in the cliffs of Petra, Hegra, and many other sites. In these 2 centuries, this society was conformed in a kind of kingdom with several kings and queens, where they also ruled these lands until in the beginning of the 2nd century Common Era, Emperor Trajan, as you may know, incorporated these lands into the Roman Empire. These people, they had writing, of course, the Nabataean a script that we can find mostly in votive inscriptions everywhere in the kingdom, and mostly they talk about the people who offers something for the gods, and also in several occasions with dates specifically for performing certain things, as we will see later on. If we would do a census of these inscriptions, we would see that in many of them there appears gods or theonyms that they are related to different gods. And in the different regions in the Nabatean realm, we can see that the main male god is Dushara. Dushara, as we will see in a moment, is this main male god that is sometimes accompanied by the main female goddess. That is, for example, in Petra, the only name that appears related to this goddess appears to be Uzza. Uzza, that in other areas it could be also equated as, or perhaps a different goddess or a different version of the same goddess as Allat, as we will see in a second. So these divinities, it has been posited that they may have in certain instances some astral connections or astral aspects or characters. For example, the main way of representing these gods, as you may already know, are by these baetyles, these stone idols that you can see here in these niches carved in the Sikh in Petra. The main male god, as I mentioned, is Dushara, that means the one of Sara, Sara meaning perhaps the mountain surrounding Petra. Sometimes, and later on, mostly in the north, it was called also just Ara. And it has been equated by Romans and Greeks with several other Greek and Roman gods, such as Zeus, Serapis, or Dionysos, perhaps with a solar character as well. and sometimes also together with another name or epithet that is Al-Kupta, the one who writes, or the writer. So it has been also equated with Hermes and perhaps the planet Mercury as well. The female, he is also termed sometimes as the one who separates the night from the day. And although it was an iconic, the Nabatean worships or religion, if we can call it that way, it was meant to be to represent the gods by an iconic way through these baetyles. Later on, it was also connected with anthropomorphic figures, and this is mainly the reason why it has been termed to be connected to Dionysus, given this way of representing the anthropomorphic figure of Dushara. The female goddess, as I mentioned in Petra, is only named Uzza, sometimes equated as Aphrodite, and the evening star, Venus, and particularly in Petra, it appears to be very connected to a version of Isis as well. Outside of Petra, it appears to be also connected to Allat, sometimes also related to the Greek Athena, to the Middle East Atargatis, and also in later times, although it was previously mostly represented as a baetyle with eyes, sometimes more stylized or more anthropomorphic. Later on, as well as Dushara, it was also represented in a more anthropomorphic way. So in this sense, this religion that is very much connected to the sky, it is not only restricted to these two gods. It appears also with Manatu, Manabat, sometimes perhaps connected to Tyche, and perhaps Selene, therefore the moon. And for instance, Roche already some time ago proposed the existence of a lunar cult in Petra, given the amount of these representations of crescents in several items. And this is something that appears not only in Petra, but astronomical representations and artifacts are common in the Nabatean realm, not only from simple astral perhaps decorations, but also through the so-called horoscope of Kutba and Nur, or this lamp found in Petra, but also from the use of solar sundials, like this one found in Hegra, or this one in the northern parts of the Nabatean kingdom. And also in Hegra, we have the tomb of Kasarasani, where it is mentioned that this tomb was built possibly by a person who was knowledgeable of the sky to perform omens with these observations. And this brings me to what the Nabateans did in their rituals. We don't know this from the inscriptions or that they left us, but from the sources, the contemporaneous sources, they described these rituals. As you may know, Strabo indicates that the Nabateans worship the sun and construct an altar on top of a house, pouring out libations and burning frankincense upon it every day. With this description, we may link the many high places that can be found in Petra, in Hegra, and in other places, but some of them are built on top of high outcrops, and in other cases, it has been proposed that such a representation could be linked also in the reconstruction, for example, of the Sela of Kutba and Nur, that also has strong astronomical or astrological connections. Other sources, like Lucian, tell us that they celebrate a festival on the day that opens spring. This is starting to tell us something on the timing of some of these festivities and rituals that they had to be performed. As Procopius also says, at the time of spring equinox, where they have 2 months devoted to their god. Or non-Gnosus, much later, already in the 5th century, cited by Photius, tell us that they gather twice a year. The first of these assemblies stands over a whole month and takes place about the middle of spring when the sun passes through the sign of Aries. So this is the beginning of spring, while the other assembly lasts for 2 months after the summer solstice. And they have to do this when the new moon arrives. So, and we will see this is very important in our investigation, they had to combine 2 different cycles, the cycle of the sun with these spring equinox and solstices with the new moon. That, as we will see, is something that, well, it takes a little bit of understanding to get used to it. And also in the 4th century, according to Epiphanius, we have that they had pilgrimages, and the time of this pilgrimage corresponds to the month of Tisri. This is in the middle of autumn. So we have different times that they are being connected to these rituals that the Arabs, in this sense, the Nabateans, they were performing at this time, even after the incorporation of the Nabatean kingdom into the Roman Empire. Later on, Christian writers such as Hieronymus tells that when Hilarius arrived to Uzza, perhaps a place very similar or where Uzza was worshipped, on the very day of the annual festival, they gather at the temple of Venus. For these people, they worship these goddess as the morning star. So as the visual representation of the goddess in the sky is the planet Venus, according to him. This is something also that is recalled by Epiphanius again when he says that in the temple of Petra, they praise a virgin when the child that is born from her is called Dushara on the night of the Epiphany. And this is very interesting because this night is very close, or is actually on the winter solstice. And it's telling us that Dushara is then probably born at this moment of the year, perhaps connecting again Dushara with the sun. Also, the same writer tells us that the sect of the Samsean inhabiting in the area of the Nabataeans, they continued worshiping the sun even after the annexation of the Nabatean kingdom into the Roman Empire. Even in the 19th and 20th centuries, we have some ethnographic sources telling us of the importance of particular mountaintops, in particular Jabal Harun, in the neighborhood of Petra. As you know, at the top of this mountain, it is where the supposed tomb of Prophet Harun, Aaron, the brother of Prophet Moses, is supposed to be buried. Today, there is a burial place, a Muslim burial place, and next to it, recent excavations have uncovered a previous Byzantine monastery attached to a probably ritual Nabatean area. Well, in the 19th and early 20th centuries, both Ludwig Burckhardt and Gertrude Bell, when visiting the area, they indicate that the visibility of this mountain, it was enough to sanctify the spot where the people was going to slaughter a victim. They would pour the blood, and when the blood reached the soil, they could build a heap of stones to mark the place where they had performed this ritual. Crawford, at the beginning of the 20th century, indicates that the Bedouins in the area still buried their dead with the face directed to the mountain where Prophet Harun was buried. And still at the beginning of this century, there are reports that the people in the area are still visiting the shrines and the high places, particularly Jebel Harun, twice a year. One at the beginning of October, probably related to the fall equinox, and one in spring, where they follow a particular route. They call it Dar and Nabi Harun, where they follow mostly the route followed by the Nabateans going up to the mountain, chanting hymns like this one: "O Harun, we are coming thirsty to you. In this summer heat driven by thirst, O Harun, the great star, the father of high planets." Quite remarkable. Or the people from Wadi Musa, they perform a procession at the winter solstice, mainly led by the local women and children, asking the Mother of Rain to so that the drought is stopping and the rainy season may start for them. Finally, our study on the Nabatean epigraphy has remarked that the calendar days are very important in these epigraphic notes, and particularly so in Hegra, where we have that a number of the facades, they have these dedications where these cartoons, when we have the names of the people who is being buried here, and also the dates when these tombs are dedicated. For example, this tomb here says that it was dedicated on the month of Nisan, the 40th year of the reign of Aretas. This has allowed not only to date most of the carving of the facades, but also allows to make small statistics on the number of months mentioned in these inscriptions, not only in Hegra, but in other places, but most of them, they are coming from Hegra. And this is what we find. We find that not all months in the possible Nabatean calendar are mentioned, but only a number of them, notably Nisan and Iyar, the ones that they are close to the spring equinox, and Tebet, which should be close to the winter solstice. We don't know which is the start of the year on this calendar. It has been proposed that it is Tisri. If it is Tisri, it is notable that it is not mentioned at all in any of these inscriptions. However, Nisan and Iyar are the most mentioned names in these inscriptions. We know that the new year, that this calendar is following the Babylonian calendar, the names of the Babylonian calendar, and in this calendar, the new year happens on the new moon after the spring equinox in the month of Nisan. And for example, in Palmyra, we know that the new year happened in the 11 days of Nisan, the month that included the spring equinox. And later on, we know that in the Hebrew calendar, there was a change from Nisan to Tisri on the 4th century Common Era. So we propose that the start of the year might have been somewhere close to the 1st of Nisan, and there were certain moments when it was meant to be celebrate the rituals in the tombs of Hegra and other places. So with this in mind, on how the Nabatean gods, they might be related to the sky, to certain heavenly bodies, and how the Nabateans are telling us in their inscriptions that they are favoring certain moments along the year, perhaps connected to the moon and the sun. We want to verify if they have also, as I said at the beginning, fossilized this in the orientation of their Celtic buildings. In order to understand more deeply how this works, I will just very briefly introduce a few astronomical concepts. The first one is on the sun, and it has to do on what we would see the sun doing on the horizon in a whole year. If we would be seeing the sun only at sunrise, starting on winter solstice, we will see that the sun is going to do a swinging motion on the horizon from this moment, winter, to summer solstice, coming back 1 year after on the winter solstice. I'll play it again so that we can see that the sun is only rising on this part of the horizon. It stops in this area, and if you can see, it takes longer to stay close to the solstice. That precisely it means the sun standing there than in the equinoxes. This is very important, and also is very important if you have noticed the shape of the horizon, because when we are doing measurements on site, we need to take not only the direction, meaning the azimuth, the angle with respect to the north, but also the altitude of the horizon. This is of key importance because in certain moments, given the altitude of the horizon, and this in Petra, in Hegra, and other places is of key importance, the sun is not going to rise exactly when it should rise if the horizon would be flat, completely flat, but it's going to rise in a different position. The combination of these two measurements, the azimuth and the altitude of the horizon, is going to give me the path that the sun or the moon or other heavenly bodies are going to do in the sky. This path is what the astronomers call declination. And this is a key parameter in the following slides. For example, imagine that I'm somebody that is going to build a house, a temple, on each day of the moment of sunrise on the horizon, as following the movement that I've seen before on the screen. If I would do a statistics of the number of houses I would have facing a different points on the sky, this is what I would have. I would have a bimodal distribution. This is nothing more than a histogram where you have that most of the monuments of the houses that I built are going to be close to these lines. These lines are the ones that set where the sun stops, the solstices, while on the equinox, I would expect a minimum. Okay? So far, so good. Now, what happens with the moon? Well, the moon is a little bit more tricky. So to say, it makes things slightly more interesting because it has also some limits on the horizon, but these limits are kind of more difficult to follow. In this movie, I'm going to start with I'm following just full moons for the sake of simplicity for the moment, and I'm going to follow these full moons in 19 years. And we are going to see that it makes this shrinking motion again, but it's not going to stop always at the same point. For instance, I started the movie and this year started here. A few years later, it's not going to reach this point any longer until 9 years after it reaches the innermost point somewhere here, and it starts to bounce back from this extremist lowest position again to the northernmost or southernmost rising or setting of the moon. These are the lunar streams. If I would do the same exercise as before, just now building my monuments instead to the sun, to the moon, what I would expect is something like this, slightly different. As you can see, the maxima are going to be in a different position. The range is going to be slightly different. This is just to mean that we have tools that tell us that if you are following the sun or the moon, we can, at least if we have large enough numbers, track and see these in these kind of figures. But the moon is a little bit more difficult because it has different phases, and different phases that are relevant culturally, because not only the full moon is important, but also, as you may know, I'm completely sure that you know that crescents and waning moons are also very important. And particularly some of these that they are connected to particular solar moments. Like, for example, the moon that follows spring equinox or autumn or solstice, and it has different ranges and shapes in the horizon, as you can see here. Okay, so far so good for the astronomy that we are going to need to understand the monuments that we have been measuring their orientation to. In a number of campaigns, we measured a large number of different cultic sites, both in the northern part of the Nabatean kingdom, not only temples like Kirbet Tarin, Kirbet Tanur, or the ones in Wadi Ram, also the temples in Petra, of course, and also other cultic sites in the center and in the surroundings of Petra, including high places, ritual areas, and some of the most prominent facades in the area. With this in mind, we divided in the common way these buildings into public buildings, the ones that they are meant, or in principle they could hold large audiences, either in front of them or in the surroundings. Also collective ones that they are the focus of some of the processions. For instance, the high places are the ones considered here, and also the private ones where a few tenths or of people may gather in one of these areas. When we take all of them together in this kind of diagram that only includes the direction of these orientations with respect to the horizon, we have here the cardinal directions and the positions of rise and setting of the sun. You can see that they are mostly facing everywhere in the horizon. So you would say, okay, so they don't have anything to do with the sky. But remember that the horizon is very important, the altitude of the horizon, because it delays or shifts where the sun, the moon, and the stars are going to rise. So once we have this into account and compare this with the declination, with this path that the things are following on the sky, we see 5 very clear concentrations in this diagram. 3 of them, the main one is connected to the equinox, and 2 of them are connected to the solstices, while these 2 are the ones on the north-south direction, on the cardinal, the meridian directions. So we will see with this that the Nabataeans apparently are indeed indicating that the ritual buildings, they should be connected with the moments that we have been seeing before, that they were important for them. If we again divide these in different type of buildings, for example, the public buildings, the temples and large facades, we may see that they are mostly in the north-south, but also facing to the sunrise at particular moments in the year. The collective ones, they tend to be facing towards west, contrary to the large public spaces, and mostly they seem to be connected with the visibility of Mount Harun, of Jebel Harun in the distance in the background. And we will see that this is also important according to the astronomy or the astronomical events that they might happen related to it. And finally, in the PhD thesis of Raymond in 2008, it was investigated the orientations of these private buildings, showing that there is some tendency to privileged direction in the northwest-southeast direction. In this sense, I would like to stress the importance of the equinoxes that we see in many of these buildings, and the solstices, as we saw in the Nabatean month names, and in the rituals and the accounts of the writers in antiquity, mentioning particular moments specifically related, for example, to equinoxes and solstices. To make a kind of test if these ideas were held everywhere in the Nabatean kingdom. We wanted to verify if a large sample of tombs in Hegra, they would follow also this kind of scheme with orientations overall towards the eastern, or so to say, equinoctial lines. To do so, we came in contact with Munir al-Musawa in Saudi Arabia, and she was keen to let us to Hegra. As most of you know, it was the southernmost prominent city of the Nabateans, and it was located in this area because, among many other things, it was next to the Alula oasis, where the Nabateans built a large necropolis with more than 130 facades and several hundreds of cysts in the area as well. Well, we wanted to measure a statistically significant sample of the facades to see if they were connected to some of these dates that they are related in the cartouches with the dedication months on top of them. To do so, we traveled and made our research in the area last year in February, measuring the orientation of the tombs in several places, not only the facades, but also ritual and cultic places as well. But in this lecture, I will focus only on the facades. The first thing to notice is that the excavators like Laila and Nehme, they indicate that the facades are meant to be seen from the city center, that it was located in this area around here. And this is indeed the case in most cases, but not always, as you can see from this shape of orientations, that some of them seem to be facing elsewhere apart from city center. Again, if we do this analysis with this kind of diagram, we might see that, okay, they might be facing everywhere, but again, it should be noticed the importance of doing actual field work on the site, where you can see the difference between what you expect if you go, for example, to Google Earth and try to do something similar, and you go to the site, to the actual site, you see that the things are completely different, and this is of paramount importance in our case. So when we change and you take this into account, the altitude of the horizon and this path of the heavenly bodies in the sky, we see that there are some concentrations, specifically to the south, connected perhaps to the east and to the winter solstice. These are more clear here in the declination, in the path diagram, where you can see this large concentration on both sides of the equinox, this one on winter solstice, and this one perhaps related to due south directions. Remember what I mentioned before on the moon. The moon has a very peculiar way of appearance in different moments, and we have verified if the most common month names that they are mentioned in Hegra and in other places, they could be related to the shape of the orientations of these monuments. And indeed, if we take the moons of Iyar and Nisan, we can see that we can understand most of the range of the largest concentration and also the peaks where they tend to be facing. So in this sense, both the orientations and the epigraphy is telling us the ritual moments, the moments that are important for doing ritual events in these areas. So in this sense, the outcome of this research is telling us indeed that the Nabataeans incorporated the sky in a particular way and the ritual times related to it into their cultic buildings. And to end, I would like to focus on a few specific monuments where these can be very much seen in a very particular way. We are going back to Petra. And to begin with, we are not going to the city center, but to one of the neighborhoods, and this is Almatraz. Almatraz is a neighborhood of in the outskirts, in the mountains surrounding the central part of Petra, and it is very interesting because there are a large number of carved spaces with baetyles, cisterns, and water channels in the area, and one triclinium where Dushara is mentioned as the god of this place, already with the name god of Madrasa, of this area, that has kept the name since then. If we go to the top part of this area, we find one of these high places, is the Almatraz high place. It has this appearance, and in front of it we have a cliff with a lot of niches to possibly to bring portable baetyles at particular moments of the year. And in the background, we can see that we can spot from this place Mount Jebel Harun in the distance. As I mentioned at the beginning, this part here is where you can see the actual burial place, the actual the present day burial place of Harun, and next to it, it will be the Nabataean temple. We don't know devoted to which deity, but the interesting thing is that on the equinox, we could see from Almatraz, from this high place, the sun setting directly behind where today we can see the shrine to Prophet Harun. And this would mark, for example, the moment, the right moment for the start of the pilgrimages to this area. A second interesting place, of course, is Al-Hazna, the treasury at the end of the Sikh, that has a peculiar orientation. Of course, is facing the Sikh, but also taking into account the altitude of this horizon, it would be consistent with seeing there the northernmost position of the moon in that swinging motion that I've shown before every 19 years. So it happens that this year and next year we are on these extreme positions of the moon, and we would like to go there next year if we get the permissions to record if the moon can be seen from the inside of this space in Al-Hazna, right on top of the Sikh at this moment. And this would happen, as you can see here, very close to the winter solstice. This will be the moon very closest to the winter solstice in this moment. And this is going to be very important in what I'm going to say next. There is the final example that I'm going to give in this lecture. That is a pilgrimage route that we believe connected the city center with the area of Ad Deir, or the monastery on top of one of the mountains next to Petra. At the winter solstice, we think that there was a procession leading from this place to Ad Deir. Why? Well, this is the temple of the winged lions, so-called because of the capitals of the columns here. This temple is where several of these figures of Uzza or Isis Uzza have been found. And well, we know that the plant that is very common to other Nabatean temples allows, for example, for a circumambulation on this high space where possibly the baetyles were located and placed. And the orientation is such that it will be facing almost south. And this almost allows for seeing the setting of one of the brightest stars on the sky, Canopus, Suhail, still used today by the Bedouins to guide themselves crossing the desert. And in winter solstice, this setting would happen just a few minutes before sunrise. This is what it is called the cosmic setting. By the way, this similar orientation appears to be connected to the Kaaba in Mecca, a similar orientation. So we believe that at this time, when the cosmic setting of this star may herald the start of this procession linking the city center to Ad Deir. At this moment, possibly passing by the Qasr al-Bint, the main temple devoted most probably to Dushara, and stopping by in the Lion's Triclinium. At this place, in the middle of the slope of the processional way leading up to the Ad Deir, to the monastery, we find this shrine where there are lions carved on both sides of the entrance, the lion being the totemic animal of Uzza possibly, and at this moment, sunrise, the sun enters through this oculus, illuminating the niche where the baetyle of the goddess would have been placed. At the end of the procession, one would get to Ad Deir, the area with a large number of cultic places, high places, and different areas. And in this, we focus on the largest facade in Petra, the Ad Deir, or the monastery as it was changed into such in Byzantine times. The orientation is such that is facing this area here, this mountain in the background. In the inside, we have this motab, this niche, where possibly the baetyle of the god or the goddess was located or even carved, as the shadow is still over there. Probably it was erased during the Christian used as a monastery, but still it can be seen the shade of this carved into the rock in the background. Well, if you go there at the time of sunset in the winter solstice, you can see this. You can see a double sunset on top of this mountain that you can see in front of it, located some meters, and you can see that the sun sets and appears again to set again a few minutes later, so that this kind of epiphany of this god or goddess was finally achieved in this way. So it happens that only in this moment, around a few days before, a few days after, the niche where the image of the god was possibly located was framed by the setting sun, only at this moment. And so it is that it's not in axis with the entrance, but it's slightly off-center relative to the doorway, so that this phenomena is going to happen. And even more, this would connect with one of the things that Epiphanius was telling us on the child born on the night of the Epiphany. Remember, this is close to the winter solstice, when Dushara might be born from her mother, the goddess Uzza. Interestingly, this part of the mountain, of this hill, was carefully saved in Nabatean times, so that this in double setting happens. So we believe this has been done on purpose, and this might connect with the depictions that the ancient writers is telling us on the rituals that the people in the area were performing on these particular times of the year. With this, I would like to end, just to summarize that in the research so far has given us a lot of material indicating that some particular moments were of importance for the Nabateans, and that they included this in not only in their inscriptions, but also in how they located and orientated their monuments in the landscape. So with this, I would like to end, thanking again the invitation to deliver this talk. And if you have any questions, I hope that we may have some time for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that fascinating lecture. That was so interesting. The blend of astrophysics and archaeology and epigraphy and history really made for a very compelling argument. I am going to turn it over to the audience. If they would like to ask any questions, they could please put it in the chat and then we could read them out so that the speaker is able to respond. I do have a question. If I,
Yes.
if I, okay, I will. A question just came in, but I will just finish mine. Whether I guess my question is born out of complete ignorance on the subject. Is were the results surprising to you, or like the correlation, was it so strong that it surprised you, or was it something that you thought might already exist given the importance of the sort of concept of the cosmos as a landscape in the ancient world?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It's something that when you go to the field, you especially with the Nabateans, that you have so much information on the possible relation of the some gods with certain asterisms and certain times that you expect something like this. But I can tell you that, for instance, going to the Ad Deir at the moment of winter solstice and seeing this is something that we didn't expect.
Right.
We had the idea that, okay, the sun is going to set in here. We wanted to record this, but we were very much surprised on how this double setting happened and how this was actually carved by the Nabateans so that this was going to be seen and incorporated into their rituals. No, so there are, for sure, there are things that they are surprising, much more surprising than what we expected at the beginning.
Excellent, thank you. That's great to hear. There was a question from Harriet Nash in the chat. She's asked, do the inscriptions give any star or asterism names?
Interesting. Not to my knowledge. The stars are mostly, as far as I know, or better to say, they might appear in one of the theonyms, perhaps as part of the name of somebody, but we don't recognize them as stars linked or attached to some of the deities, for example. In that sense, it could be so, for instance, with Suhail and other stars, but this is something, yeah, it's a good point that we might search for it now that we know that it might be of importance. Yes, thank you.
There's a comment from Hatun Al-Farsi. Thank you for this enchanting lecture. The relationship between Arabs and the cosmos is reputed in literature, but the architecture in this way is very interesting. So that's a very positive comment. Thank you, Hatun, for that.
Yeah.
There's a question from Zaid Al-Kahan. If one takes the positions that town dwellers and nomads form a duality rather than a dichotomy, do you think Safaedic and Hismaitic evidence can inform us on Nabatean religion? Should we consider the authors of these texts as practicing the same religion as the Nabataeans?
On the second one, I wouldn't answer yes or no. I'm not the one to say if they are practicing the same religion or not. But I would say that, yeah, they could give us information on the Nabatean religion for sure. We know that, for instance, there are some Saphitic inscriptions mentioning stars and month names and so on, that they might be linked and related to some of the findings that we are having on the Nabatean religion. So in that sense, it could be somehow related, yes.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Teodora Kokoza. First of all, congratulations on the presentation. Very interesting and above all inspiring. A practical question. Is it in the pipeline to explore these dynamics in the broader Nabataean landscape of Northern Arabia? And here I'm referring to the oasis of Allat, which has Nabataean tombs carved out of the rocks, and with the oasis of Duman al-Jandal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, given the results in Hegra, we would like also to expand these to other areas, and possibly if we have the permissions and we are lucky enough, we will try to do it in one of the next campaigns in the area. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Andrew Sim. There's lots of questions coming in now. There's a question from Andrew Sim. Are there any similarities between these findings and those you might find in European archaeological sites, such as Stonehenge or the Callanish stones?
Wow. Well, the thing is that, of course, Stonehenge or Callanish, they are from completely different areas and periods of time and different. I'm sure you know that they are megalithic monuments from, say, the second or even the third millennium before the Common Era. So in that sense, linking these to the Nabateans is rather cumbersome, so to say. Having said this, in Jordan, there is a large number of megalithic monuments as well. And sometime in the past, we also studied the orientation of these megalithic monuments. And we found that indeed they are also following the sun in a very broad and loose manner, so that the orientation of, if we group together all the monuments in Jordan and look at the orientation, their orientation seems to be following this diagram that I was showing with these two peaks, that if we were following the sun at any moment in the year, they should have. So the megalithic monuments in Jordan, they seem to follow this kind of pattern. In this sense, there could be some similarity, very loose similarity with those European sites.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Since it's coming up to 11 p.m. I just briefly have a comment beforehand. In reference to your argument, I am struck. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the work of Timothy Palkatat in Cahokia in Mississippi. Yeah, and there, you know, his book about the archaeology of the cosmos was it dealt with this issue in a way in which initially people were sort of slightly reluctant to buy into the arguments, but the cogency of his arguments about Cahokia and the way he expressed it reminded me very much of your presentation. And do you think, so this is my question, do you think that the way in which we can analyze these things scientifically, whether or not we're looking at the constellation of stars as it was 2,000 years ago, do you think that that is moving the field of archaeoastronomy? Let's be honest, it's been on the edges of scholarship to some extent. Do you feel that that's moving it towards the mainstream of scholarship in the way that Palpatat's book on Cahokia did?
Hopefully, yes. I mean, I can tell that, given, well, on my experience, I started on doing research in this some 20 years ago, and you could see the faces of archaeologists, historians, and they will raise their eyebrows and look at you with suspicion. Today, I'm working on a heritage science institute that is full of archaeologists, historians, and this has given me the chance to not only try to convince them, but also to incorporate most of the language and the ideas that in the past they were missing from the archaeoastronomy or cultural astronomy research. In that sense, I believe that working together with archaeologists, historians, in a multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary environment is one of the most fruitful things for this field, for any field, of course, but for archaeoastronomy to become mainstream, for sure, yes.
Thank you. I mean, and also I would say, if your research provokes archaeologists raising their eyebrows, it's almost certainly heading in the right direction. So the last question is from Derek Kennett. So there are some other questions, but we have to end this at 11, and we can ask subsequent questions to be directed directly to the speaker. Derek Kennett has asked, he comments, Michel Mouton has argued for a pan-Arabian cultural context from which some aspects of Nabatean culture emerged, based on parallels with Malaha and Khalat al-Fal. Would it be worth looking also at orientations of the monuments from these sites in a similar way? So, for example, I think here is specifically referring to looking at the orientations of sites in southeastern Arabia, for example.
Yeah, for sure. Not meaning that there was this pan-Arabian cultural context, but it could be there, and it will be interesting to see the different connections, influences, differences in the region. For instance, we have done some research also in Dadan, in Alula, and there are some similarities, very close similarities to the things that we have found in Hegra next door, but there are also some differences, and very striking differences that point to perhaps connections to other parts in the Arabian Peninsula. So indeed, it will be worth looking at different areas and seeing these similarities and differences to have a better picture of all of these, of course.
Thank you very much, Antonio Cesar. And on that note, I want to thank you for delivering this year's Beatrice to Cardi lecture. It was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much to you, and I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. We did. And on that note, we will end